good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Goat's Milk Appreciation Week webinar. Thank you for joining us. We have a wonderful evening this evening. We've got a great panel of goat's milk, goat's cheese experts joining us. Whilst you're all joining, I'll just give you a little update with the Academy. We have got another webinar starting next week on Tuesday, and that's with Wisconsin Cheese. We've only just put that up, so have a look on our website. And in a couple of weeks' time, we've got our event of the year, Afternoon of the Year, which one of our panelists this evening, Roger, will be both competing and has one of his cheeses as well, Rachel, as one of the competition cheeses. So there's, well, Matthew can tell you a little bit more about that later. A brief introduction to everyone that's here tonight. We have Toby Hampton from ETSPR. He will talk a little bit about Goat's Milk Appreciation Week. We have Gary Yeomans, who is the chairman of the Milking Goats Association. We have the inimitable Roger Longman, who is a goat's milk farmer and a fantastic goat's cheese maker. And we have Alan Whiston from Delamere Dairy. And not forgetting Matthew Luke, our very own Matthew Luke from the Academy, who is our courses and events coordinator. He'll be talking to you a little bit about affinage of goat's cheese in conjunction with Afternoon of the Year. Please do let us know where you're from in the chat. And also, if you've got any questions that you'd like answering, we'll try and answer as we go. Otherwise, we'll do a Q&A session towards the end. But please do put where you're from in the chat. I'm not seeing anyone at the moment, but oh, Midwales. Hello, Elliot. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know you're out there. So keep them coming. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Matthew. Hong Kong and Salisbury. I'm going to hand you over to Matthew. Have a great evening. Enjoy your cheeses. Those of you that were lucky enough to get them before they sold out. I believe you've got some crackers this evening. And without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Matthew.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, hi everyone. So we're going to go through each of our guests one by one. We'll start with Gary, who currently is on the side. I don't know if that's something that you can fix, Gary. If not, we'll. There you are. Perfect. So, Gary, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Goat's Milk Appreciation?
Yeah. So my name's Gary Yeomans. I'm the chairman of the Milking Goat Association. So I'm a dairy goat farmer here in Monmouthshire in South East Wales, and I just finished milking. So here are my goats, just in my back as I speak. So I supply milk to Abergavenny Fine Foods, who make the soft cheese log and supply most of the major multiples. So we've started Goat's Milk Appreciation Week a couple of years ago, just to raise profile and get people interested in goat's cheese and getting it, new people to taste it and things like that. And it's been a great success the last couple of years. So here we are doing it again this year.
Fantastic. How many goats do you have behind you there?
So we milk 600 altogether. So they're in a couple of different buildings. We milk them twice a day, 5:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon.
Wow. So you say that's been quite a success, the appreciation of goat's milk. Would you be able to say how that's manifested itself? Have you seen a rise in sales, or?
Just raises the profile. We've got really good coverage across different media Toby's more of the expert in that sort of thing. I'm just a simple goat herder. So
Shall we bring
it's
Toby
the
in?
profile of the cheese.
You're on mute, Toby.
I've just unmuted myself. So no, this is the third year we've done Goat's Milk Appreciation Week, and effectively it's a call out. What we do is a call out to anybody who deals with goat's milk products, be it cheese, milk, yogurt, butter, milk, to help promote. So as an example, some of the members of the Goat's Milk Association, like Delamere and St Helens, have been actively promoting the week via their social media platforms. We have some cheesemongers who've been putting recipes and posts about goat's cheese on their social media platforms, and also doing tastings in store. The whole idea is just to get more awareness, to get people more behind how fantastic goat's milk products are and how brilliant they are here in the UK.
It's still a fairly underappreciated thing in the UK, I think. It's gaining traction, definitely, but
it is gaining traction. I think it's a case of getting people to try it more and more. Last year, we were able to do a session at Chiswick Cheese Market with Roger, actually, from White Lane Cheese. And the really interesting thing is to get people to actually sample it and sample goat's cheeses. And Matthew, you'll know this from being a cheesemonger yourself. People's perception of the taste of goat's cheese, but also goat's milk products, it's really interesting because they have this perception, and then when they actually come to try it, it's quite amazing to see the faces they have. And often it's surprising, oh, I didn't really expect it to taste that way. Or the classic I've always heard, and I'm sure Roger and Gary and Alan will smile when I say this, is people say, oh, I don't like it because it's too goaty. And the funny thing is, what does that actually mean? And as you know, Matthew, with goat's cheeses, you have a whole variety of very soft, fresh, lemony, citrusy goat's cheeses, all the way to the hard goat's cheeses, which can have some really lovely, strong, even caramel toffee flavours.
Yeah, I think we've got a bit of a tendency in the UK to lump all goat's cheese together in a way that you wouldn't with cow cheese. You wouldn't just sort of say, I fancy a cow cheese tart or whatever. But with goat's cheese, we have a historic leaning toward doing that. But I think through work like this, we're now sort of shifting that notion a bit.
I hope so. I mean, you know, it's the start, and there's always more places to go on this journey. And I'll leave you with this wonderful thing that Roger Longman, this sort of funny cheesemaker from Somerset, who owns a company called White Lake, said to me once. You've got the word goat, and for a lot of people it can mean the greatest of all time. But Roger said to me once, it's basically just go out and try. And I just really love that. So my thing to people from today and going forwards is just to go out and try it, because you hopefully will be really pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, great. Yeah, wise words. Okay, we'll move. Thanks for that, and we'll move on to Alan now, I think.
Okay, everyone. Let me just see what I can do here. Good evening, everyone. I'm not sure whether it's good evening or good morning for some people. I see these people from all over the planet.
Mixture of both.
On here. So welcome to all. Let me see if I can just share my screen one moment. And what I'm going to just talk about really is we will touch on, we will of course touch on goat in this. Can everybody see that? Has that appeared?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. It's just worth reminding ourselves, what a wonderful product we've got. I mean, I've been in the industry. Most people have probably never heard of me. Some have. I've been in the industry for 45 years. I can't consider myself an expert cheesemaker. I'm a cheesemaker by trade, going back to the early 80s. I did my college training through Rees Heath College in Cheshire. And I've been in the industry, working my way through as a cheesemaker, mainly on blue cheese, but then also, in various different formats, really, and managing factories. I'm now the operations director for. I've had a wonderful career in dairy, in dairy in its entirety. Let's say, really, across all sorts of sectors, really, whether it be projects or just making cheese or managing factories. So, and it never ceases to amaze me. What a wonderful process we've got here, really. Milk in its sort of raw form is the most underrated food on the planet. It really is, you know, and we can, the history, goes back donkey's years, it's one of the oldest sort of foodstuffs that man can think of. It was going back, thousands of years,
Thousands of years, yeah.
and it's pretty much the same now as it was then. All we're doing is taking the solids out of the milk. Yes, the technology's moved on leaps and bounds over the years, etc. But isn't it fantastic? It's just such a, I don't know, undervalued food really, and the innovation that we see is just endless. And it's just so many options to what we can do. And this next slide of mine just sort of demonstrates that really, in that you can see, if we were looking at the sort of, the minimums and maximums of all these, from a product that's 29% sort of moisture for a Parmesan to 80% on cottage cheese, and anything within the middle of that, in terms of protein levels, anything from 35, 36 grams, percent there, right the way through to sort of 17, and total fat, from 25, 26% right the way to 4. There's just endless opportunities. And I mean, Roger's a great example. I'll hand you over to Roger later in the call, but Roger's, what is it now, Roger? You're making what, 20? I've sort of, come down to your dairy a few years ago. You're making 27 different cheeses.
Yeah, I think it's about 35 now.
Really? And what a fantastic example. And that's from, endless opportunities, as I'm sure you're all aware. So
just sorry, whilst this slide is up, I can't help but notice that they're predominantly cow's milk cheeses. How would a typical goat's cheese compare in sort of protein content and moisture and total fat and so forth?
Very, very similar. The thing that's different with the goat's milk, of course, is it's a much more gentle milk. It's a lot more delicate, let's say. So the protein structures are softer. So when you're then making that cheese, the same recipe, let's say, for a cow's milk to a cow milk cheddar to a goat milk cheddar equivalent, is you probably find it slightly softer and slightly crumblier because the protein structures are slightly different. So
it's quite typical, I guess, that goat's cheese tends not to melt, which is why it's so good in cooking and grilling and all that sort of stuff. Like, what do you know? Why that is? Is it the protein structures?
Yeah, exactly. It is principally the protein structures, and it's always difficult when you come to cutting and pack a hard goat cheese because it tends to crumble a lot more than you would a conventional sort of cow milk cheddar. So it's it's just, we often say, we laugh and we joke. We're just saying, about how difficult it is to get new consumers into the goat market. But over the years, technology has moved on. It almost seems to have this sort of unfair stigma around it, which is like, I remember the hint of Billy, and it's like, but we've all moved on from that, and it's and just need to get it into people's mouths because it's such a fabulous product. Whether that be milk, whether it be yogurt, whether it be cheese, all the derivatives, so whether it's the butter, we all have to make at Delamere here, we make the cheese, we make the butter, we make the yogurt, and so on. But because we just have to try and do everything really. But the fresh milk is obviously underlying. We often consider it a medicine. People, the consumers of our products are very loyal, and they buy it because they actually need it.
Yeah,
lots of the cheese that are out there, they're not sort of buying it through general sort of choice as such, because it's providing choice for cheese boards and things like that, as opposed to the fresh milk, which is needed for the skin complaints, eczema, and it's very good for all sort of issues. So it's interesting, the dynamics of it really, but getting new consumers into it is the difficult one, really. So the point of that one slide there is just to say, look at the options here. It's endless opportunities. The extremes that we can make in terms of cheese across the whole range is pretty endless, as Roger's just sort of demonstrated by himself in his own dairy, making 35 cheeses. And and again, without wanting to teach grandmother to suck eggs, the basic simple science about making the cheese it hasn't changed. It's all about just taking the solids out of the milk. We have legal limits that we have to work to, in terms of pasteurization. But apart from that, afterwards, it's whether you add any colouring, it's whether you add in the different flavour enhancers, the acidifying bacteria that you need, and whether you want any gas producers in there. It's just like making a cake. You can add bits in, take bits out, but the fundamentals of making the cheese are the same now as it was donkeys years ago.
Mm.
And we're adding the rennet, the clotting agent, which is enabling us to sort of trap in those solids, if you like, and then so what we're doing is creating a milk jelly, for want of a better description. And then that's entrapping the sort of the fat globules all together. We're then removing the whey, and as a general rule of thumb, and again it'll vary a lot with Rogers, but in terms of the yield that we talk about, which is the conversion of the milk to cheese, it's very, very roughly 10-1. So 90% of the volume of your milk is your whey. Very, very round numbers. If it's a lot higher moisture cheese, then obviously it's a less amount of milk. If it's a drier cheese, then it's a lot more milk. But in terms of round numbers and calculations and thinking, approximately 10,000 litres of milk will give you about a ton of cheese, there or thereabouts.
How many goats is that? What's the average yield of a goat?
Well,
how about I put you on the spot here?
Not really. It does vary a bit farm to farm, but anywhere between sort of, a good goat across a year would give you about sort of 1,400 litres a year. So if you divide that by 360, so one goat would give you 3.8 litres a day. So 3.8 litres. So if we go 10,000 litres divided by 3.8, that's about 2,600 goats to produce 1 ton of cheese in one day.
So essentially, if you had a personal goat, or if one were to have a personal goat, you could make a single 250-gram or 300-gram goat's cheese a day.
Yes, there or thereabouts. So if you've got 2.6 litres, and then divide that, yeah, exactly. You get about 2.5 kilos, something like that. 250 grams, sorry.
Yeah, a good tip for all those at home if you fancy a daily goat's cheese.
Fancy having a go. And of course, you can do it with lemon. You can do it with lemon juice. You don't need any hi-fi, any fancy ingredients, etc. You can do it with some citrus, So it's quite a straightforward process. So and that's how it all started, of course. And then just moving through the process. So we've added the cultures, we've added the starter culture, we've added the rennet, and then it comes through to expelling the whey, pitching the curds, cherrying of the curd. In some cases, you might not do that because you might be making a soft cheese. And then any further development of the acid, it might be an overnight recipe. So you can, allowing the pH to fall off. And there's so many things that you can do at that point. And then you obviously would add the salt, and then you would compact it into a shape or some format. And then you would then leave it to mature, whether it's 1 week, whether it's a month, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 10 months, 12 months. So many options. It's just endless. So what I'm talking about here is a general sort of cheddar making sort of process, but in principle, it's all the same.
We just had a question in the chat of whether the rennet is goat rennet. If it's
a microbial rennet, actually. So many years ago, it used to be produced from a cow's stomach, of course, which we'll all remember. But as times have moved on, them days are gone, understandably, and we are now using microbial produced rennets out of laboratories. I think that's fairly. I think there are a few exceptions, and Roger will probably, he's the expert. He'll probably tell us a little bit more about that when he gets to his section, but I still think there are a few of the very old rennets in place. But
I think it's quite common on the continent. Certainly, I can't think of many French producers who would use non-traditional rennet.
That's right. It's a very, very small percentage. And then from that, of course, you then, forming, again, salting the process. That's, of course, giving you the control and the ability to draw out even more moisture, which is giving you the life. It's allowing the flavors to develop. And then we squeeze it out. There's a little picture on there. It's probably not that clear for you all, but that's some tall cheddar towers that are then a very automated process that's pushing out a 20-kilogram block. And then from that point, it'll sit in either a wooden box or crate or a plastic crate, sit in maturing storage for, again, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, 10 months, 8 months, whatever. And then that's its maturing cycle. And then huge amount of cost tied up in stock, as you can imagine. If you think that 90% of your milk is going down the drain, or not going down the drain, but going for further processing as whey, probably nowadays. Interestingly, that dynamic's changed over the years, and that many years ago, the whey was the byproduct of the process. Now, in some cases today, the cheese is the byproduct of the whey process, because there's a lot of added value in the whey solids and commanding premiums into all the infant formulas and whey proteins, powders for the bodybuilders of the world, etc. So, just an interesting point there to note that there's not much wasted nowadays, guys. It's pretty much all used.
It is interesting. Would you say there's maybe more demand for like whey powder than goat's cheese at the moment?
I'm talking generally about cows.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's very few, if any. I don't think there's any goat cheese makers doing anything with the goat whey, because there just isn't enough volume to warrant a production run on the scale of a big commercial dryer. So
does it just become waste or like feed or
that's right,
or something?
Yeah, anaerobic digesters or feed. So that's pretty much that, really. What else have I got? And then I just basically a few simple pictures of what a 20-kilogram block looks like, really. So and over the years, these things have just sort of developed into the commercial sort of scalability. So, there's a reason for this. So most Arctic lorries carry 26 tons, 26 pallets. If each pallet carries a ton, then you need a ton on each pallet. So, 50 blocks on a pallet, which is 5 layers of 20 kilograms, 10 on a layer, that's your ton. So you're making best use of your space on your pallet, in your boxes, in your storage, in your warehouse for your maturing, etc., and on your lorries. So it's all scalable and all works back from that one. So when you're then cutting the blocks down in automatic factories, as they do nowadays, you've then got a good, consistent shape and format that can be presented in a nice way for the consumers. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for me. I just thought it was a good chance to just recap on, what we do here with this milk. It's fantastic. What a great product, and long may it continue, because we've got a planet to feed. We're in an ever-growing population density, aren't we? And what a fantastic opportunity for everyone to sell more goat products, really, because the world is our oyster. It really is.
Definitely. And so just a couple of questions for myself, actually. One, where can people buy this cheese? It's quite widely available, is it?
Yeah. You'll
in
find
the UK, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, the standard, the standard hard goat cheese that we present, the Delamere, and there's also the St. Helens brand out there as well, is in any retailer. We've also. We don't just make the cheese, we supply milk to other people who make their own cheese. So there's a company up in Lancashire called Butler's. They make 4 different goat cheeses, and they've got it all into all 4 cheeses into the top, one of the top retailers in the country. So so many options. Some of it's considered specialty, some of it's considered an everyday cheese, which is probably the product that we sell, which is a very inoffensive product that's about 3 to 6 months of age. It's not really challenging. It's it's a very versatile cheese that you can cook with, or you can put it in a sandwich. You can do whatever you want with it, and it's and it's really quite versatile. But it's not really probably a specialist cheese for a cheese board, as per Rogers cheeses.
I remember back in the awful days of the lockdown when I worked in the cheesemonger, we supplied we used to supply some restaurants with goat's butter. That when the restaurants were closed down, we had no outlet for it, of course, and a lot of it was in danger of going to waste. So I was able to take quite a lot home and cook with it, and I had some of the most luxurious, tasty meals of my life.
Yes.
Like fresh asparagus, gently fried in goat's butter, was probably the best thing I've ever had. Yeah, I highly recommend.
Yeah, I mean,
we
we do export products, all over the world, and not just us, Delamere. This is, our competitors as well. There are opportunities globally, and it's and especially with butter.
I do have a question from Jean in the chat of, do you make ricotta?
No, we don't. No,
You
that's
don't?
probably a question for Roger, actually, but
Probably is, yeah. So
one of his 35.
Or the 36th if it isn't. Okay, well, thanks for that, Alan.
No problem. Happy to take any questions towards the end if we need to.
Yeah, if anyone's got any questions regarding the makes of these cheeses or any other questions for Alan, stick them in the chat and we'll answer some questions at the end.
Thank you.
Okay. So let me introduce Roger Longman. You're on mute at the moment. There you are.
Hello.
Hi, Roger.
Hi.
So do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us
I
all
will.
about...
I'll just answer a couple of the questions that went to Alan. Someone asked, do we use animal rennet, goat animal rennet? We used to pre-Brexit, but it comes from Europe. And since Brexit, the volumes we were buying and most of the goat's cheese makers are the same. It's not been worth it. And I think sort of animal rennet really benefits if you're making like a cheddar that's you're aging for 2 years. Soft goat cheeses tend to be much softer and younger, so we never really found a huge difference. We've kind of stuck with vegetarian rennet because if you go to a restaurant, the vegetarian option is quite often the goat's cheese. So yeah, most goat's cheeses I would expect to be a vegetarian rennet.
So you didn't notice much difference in the make when you switched over?
Not for the sort of
like
cheeses we're making. I think if you were making a cheddar or something that, particularly a raw milk cheese, that's when animal rennet really shows its benefits. But yeah. And I think someone asked about ricotta. We occasionally make ricotta, so we make a halloumi, a pure goat halloumi, and when we make that as part of the process, we make ricotta, and we'll sell that at sort of the few farmers markets we do, like Queen's Park and Stroud, but that's only once or twice a month. So it's
quite a rare.
It's quite energy intensive making ricotta. Not usually worth it, unfortunately.
Someone else has asked a question that you might be able to answer. Can you smoke goat's cheese?
Yes,
Any on the market?
Yeah, so we actually, unsurprisingly, do smoke a goat's cheese. So we make a goat's kafili called King of the Castle, and then we smoke it. So it's smoking of the castle, available online or at our farmers markets. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the only smoked goat's cheese that I've ever come across in the UK. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, with that, do you want to tell us all about White Lake and why you have an abundance of cheeses?
Yeah. Okay. So I run White Lake Goat Cheese. My parents and grandparents used to be cheddar makers. I wanted to do something different. So I thought I'll milk goats and try making goat's cheese. I thought they'd be like little cows. They're not like little cows, as Gary will attest. They are awkward, troublesome animals, but I love them to bits. They're great fun, much more interesting than cows, I think. So I'm not very good at just doing one thing. I need to be doing lots of different things all at the same time. Not all of them well, but generally cheese making, I found it enables me to stay within the bubble of the cheese world and create a ridiculous amount of cheeses. And I love the challenge of new cheeses. Sometimes I have an idea and sometimes the customer says, "Oh, can you make a cheese?" And one of those examples of that is this little cheese that those of you who bought the pack will have this in there. This is a shilling. So that was a cheesemonger asked me to make a goat crottin. So that's what that is.
Is this a good time for people to, if they haven't already,
those who've got your cheeses there, I'll sort of fairly quickly rattle through the cheese that you've got, and those who haven't, will just have to sort of imagine the flavour through the magic of screen. So the first one we've got is this, which is our Glaston tile. So this is the sort of the most basic, the freshest sort of goat's cheese you can have. So quite often you'll see these in supermarkets in a little log, and it's super fresh and creamy. I love it. Goes down a treat, and it's a really good cheese for people who think they don't like goat's cheese, because it's very mild, it's very lemony and zesty. You won't really get any goat flavour. So if you blind tasted, people wouldn't even know it was a goat's cheese unless they understood the different texture of goat's cheeses. If that makes
It's almost
sense.
like lemon curd or something, isn't it? Or like a
Exactly.
lemon cheesecake or
So
something
you
like
can
that.
you can use it. You can use it as a sweet, as a cheesecake base, or you can mix it with herbs and chives and things like that, and use it as a dip. So a really, really versatile product. The next step up, sorry, bash my screen then, is, I'm just going to cut into that. So this is the cheese I showed a bit earlier. This is the shilling. So this is the same curd as the tile, but we grow a geotrichum rind on the outside, and that helps it sort of soften and ripen. So you get quite a lot more flavour. Now,
Someone's just asked or noted that their shilling has a few spots of mold. Should she
absolutely
cut it
fine.
off?
These
Yes,
are
do not
artisanal
cut it off,
products.
Lisa.
You will get mold on it. There's nothing wrong with it. Don't worry about that sort of thing. We are not a sterile environment. We're trying to grow molds, and we try and grow geotrichum mold. But sometimes, especially at this time of year when it's hotter, we'll get a little bit of blue molds on it, and sometimes the odd bit of black mold. But perfectly safe. The blue mold you'll see on that is the same as what you get in Roquefort, and also in the bit of blue cheese I've got here as well. So this is a great cheese, for eating, but actually, I think Alan talked about cooking cheese earlier. You can chuck this in the oven for 5 minutes, or the air fryer for a couple of minutes, and just warm it up, and it will melt on the inside, and then just have it on the salad. Well, I love eating my cheese. Or you can, if you're really brave, you can unwrap it, keep it in the fridge for a month, 2 months, let it go really hard like a little rock, and then you can grate it onto Parmesan. So a really versatile product in many ways. So yeah, then now we've got some cheeses for the brave now. So there's a little bit missing off here because I got a bit hungry while I was waiting, so I've eaten a chunk of it already. So this is a cheese that I spent a long time developing, and it's one of my favourite cheeses at the moment. This is Kingfisher Blue. So this is a blue goat's cheese. Now, there's not many blue goat's cheese in this country. There's a couple in France and Spain, and yeah, this is it's sort of to a Roquefort style recipe, but not as salty as a recipe. So really fruity, sweet flavors. Just a really nice cheese to eat. I don't know about cooking it. I just tend to just cut, as you can see, cut chunks off it, and eat it. It's a cheese I'm very, very proud of, because to me, making blue cheese is one of the hardest cheeses to get right, especially with goats, because the fat and protein are so fragile. It's really hard to get it to work. So that was quite a lot.
Do you think that's why there's a scarcity of it? That it's such a difficult make.
I think so. It's also, I don't think there's many people as mad as me who want to make such a range of cheeses. So you'll get so Ticklemore do a fantastic blue goat cheese, but they specialize in blue cheeses. So they do blue goat, cow, and sheep, and their blue goat cheese is very different from mine. It's like eating butter. It just melts in your mouth. I have no idea how they managed to do it, but it is Harborne Blue. It's a spectacular blue cheese. You don't get a lot of blue in it, but you taste the blue, and it dissolves in your mouth when you eat it. It's really, really nice. Highly recommend it. Yeah, and I think Butlers, do a Beacon Blue. Well, I'm not sure if they still do it. I haven't seen it around for a while. But yeah, so there's not many blue goat cheeses. And then at the other extreme, so these are all cheese. So that blue will mature that for about 3 months. At the other end, the long end, we've got this bad girl. So this is Rachel Reserva, which is a 12-month-old hard goat cheese. Now this has buckets of flavour, but again, not, people talk about goaty taste. We don't really get a goaty taste with this cheese. So yeah, so the way to eat this is just to take it, Stick it in your mouth and eat it. Right. That's Emma the cheesemonger taught me how to eat cheese. And it just melts in your mouth. It's beautiful. Have a glass of wine with it. Phenomenal range of flavors.
Pairing suggestion? Favorite wine to pair with it?
Sancerre. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always with cheese, always white wine. Very rarely
Yeah.
you'll find a red wine that's mild enough to not. I've had some early Beaujolais at a wine tasting a couple of months ago, and they worked really, really well. But most red wines have just got too much tannin. They dominate the
Quite a
cheese,
bit, yeah.
and you're wasting the flavors of the cheese. The trick with cheese and wine pairings is have a bit of cheese in your mouth, have a slurp of wine, then eat your cheese with the mouth full of the wine, and all those flavors go up into your nose, and you get sort of double bubble. So eat a bit of cheese, eat that first, then trust a bit of wine, and then put both together, and you get so much more from it. Obviously, don't put too much wine in your mouth because then when you try and chew it, it comes out. But
yeah, good tips.
One of the other things that I think Alan was talking about was about goat's milk being much gentler, and we've sort of grown our business through people who find they have allergies to cow's milk for whatever reason, and goat's milk is that the fat is much closer to human milk, so it's much easier for the human body to digest. And on the Western world, we consume a lot of cow's milk. Most other places like India and places like that, goat's milk is the dominant, tends to be the dominant milk. So don't think by having sort of goat's milk there's something weird about you. It's perfectly normal, and the majority of the world will consume goat's milk rather than cow's milk. You also, I think, was it you talked about getting your own goat and making a bit of cheese? Always good fun. Always good fun. Got to have two goats. You can never have a single goat because they like to be in pairs at least.
Okay.
But actually,
double the amount of cheese.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the easier option is just go to the supermarket and buy some Delamere St Helens milk and learn that way. Getting a goat just to make a bit of cheese is quite an expensive hobby. And there are numerous Instagrammers out there trying and failing at doing it. So yeah, I'm unusual in that I'm a farmer and a cheesemaker. Most people tend to be one or the other. I'm just greedy and I like to do everything.
And so would that work if someone was to go to the supermarket and buy a litre of goat's milk?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they just
Absolutely.
in a saucepan with a bit of lemon juice.
Particularly if you make this sort of fresh lactic cheese, I wouldn't use lemon juice. I would use a bit of yogurt or kefir as a starter culture. And a
bit more gentle.
And you can buy sort of dry rennet tablets. But you're going to need to experiment how much tablet to put in per litre of milk. We use liquid rennet; it's completely different strength, so I can't really advise on that. But cheese making most cheeses have historically been created by mistake. There's no way you design mozzarella as a cheese to make. It's just absolutely crazy. The story is someone dropped some curd in boiling water, and when they fished it out, it went all stretchy. So yeah, I'm very much a believer of fail and fail again until you get it right. There's nothing wrong with trying. All you'll have done is spent a bit of money on a bit of milk. And there's lots of really good websites out there on how to make cheese. It's not a scary thing. To make cheese at our level and to do it consistently well is a different kettle of fish. But there are some good cheese makers out there like Burt's Cheese, not goat cheese makers, but who do cheese making courses at their premises. So Google those sort of people, and it gets you started, and you might get addicted. And then you might even want to start your own cheese making company, and obviously buying goat's milk to do that.
So, what did you say? You had 35 different cheeses? Yeah,
so that's not all goat's cheeses. I do sheep and cow's cheeses. Because there's 35 that are on the market at the moment. I think I've got 4 in development as well at the moment. Possibly 5. Someone's just asked me to make another one today. So yeah.
Where'd you get your inspiration from?
So I travel a lot and I love eating cheeses. I'm a nightmare to go on holiday with because I just want to find cheese shops or farms, and see and learn. And cheese making is something that pretty much every country in the world does, and cheese makers are generally really generous with their time. I went to France this year and found the only raw milk Epoisse maker, and Epoisse is my favorite cheese by a long way. I spent a sort of a whole morning with them. They showed me everything, and they said, if you ever want to come back and do it again, I said, oh, I'll be back. So that's on my list of projects in the future. A really good English Epoisse, because it's quite a hard cheese to make, but I like the
With goat's
challenge.
milk or cows?
No, I think it'll probably be too expensive with goat's milk and too specialized. We did do a washed rind goat's cheese called Equinox for a few years.
Yeah.
But I think we struggle to get it to hit a price point that people could genuinely afford. And goat's milk is more expensive because there's a lot more labor and cost involved in producing goat's milk than cow's milk.
And the yield is much lower, obviously.
No, the yield of cheese per litre is fairly similar. But obviously there's a lot less, Alan talks to us 3.5 litres of goat. That's roughly a tenth of a cow, but it's the same amount of labour to milk a goat as it is a cow. And so it's a goat farming is not for the faint-hearted. People think, oh, I'll farm goats, they're smaller and easier than cows. Yes, that's true, but then there's so many other problems associated with it. And one of the reasons for the Milking Goat Association, we are an organisation of goat farmers, is to help each other with problems and solutions. And that really, really helps a lot of us, to be honest. I think, if I knew what I knew now 26 years ago when I started milking goats, life would have been a lot easier. Yeah.
So, well, to bring it back around to, I think Rachel briefly mentioned it before, Afternoon of the Year.
Really excited.
So
So that is one of my favorite days. If anyone's in London, get your tickets. How much are the tickets, do you know?
I don't want to say because it's wrong.
It doesn't matter how much the tickets are
for the day.
It's £60, yeah, plus VAT. So
£60 for the day.
You will eat your body weight in cheese.
You will.
So we've got the most amount of
so
cheeses.
don't think it's extremely good value if you're a cheese nerd. And the
so
other thing that will be
16th of
available
June.
to buy at the is our new t-shirts. It's a great day out. If you're in London, come along. It's fantastic fun. I have a lot of fun seeing what people have done with my cheeses. I'm also afternoon Baron Bygod and Stilton. Can't tell you what I'm doing.
So for those who might not know what the competition actually is, so the Academy set this up 5-6 years ago. I think we're in the 5th year now. Is that right, Rachel? I don't know if she's there. I think it was we're in the 5th year. We essentially send out a range of cheeses. So we have a cheddar, a Caerphilly. This year, for the first time, we've got a goat's cheese, the Rachel, and Baron Bygod and a Stilton. We send them out to competitors when the cheeses are extremely young, before they've had any real chance to develop anything, any rind or anything like that. They get sent to the competitors and they affineur them to however they want, how they see fit. People get very creative with them, very, very creative. They spend the rest of their lives with the competitors, and then on the finals day, which this year is June the 16th, we all get together in London. The cheeses go off to be judged by an expert panel, or some of the cheese goes off to be judged by an expert panel, and the rest of the cheese gets fed to the public and anyone who comes to the finals. We do have, I think it's the highest amount of competitors and cheeses this year. I think we've got something like 30 different cheeses to try across all categories. So definitely anyone who's interested to come along. It's a great day. You get to eat. I don't know anyone who's able to eat all of the cheeses, actually. There's a lot of cheese to get through. But so you have supplied cheeses in the past, and this year you're supplying the Rachel, but you're also a competitor.
Yeah.
how do you feel seeing what people do to your cheese?
So
What's
yeah, I think I love about Afternoon. I love playing with other people's cheese, but for me, I love seeing what pe other people who don't necessarily think the same way I do are doing with my cheese. So, one of the cheeses that we had last year was our solstice. Um,
mm,
it wasn't the cheese that one that I personally like the most, but I spoke to the cheesemaker about it, and they said what they did to it, and we've actually changed our affineuring slightly to take into account what
to
they do,
match?
and it's definitely improved the cheese. Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah.
cool.
So I'm
That's
really
very cool.
excited what to see what people do with Rachel, because it's not an
Mm,
easy it's not an easy cheese to affineur.
mm.
So if someone can find a better way of doing it, I'll be a very happy man.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, actually, I don't think anyone else other than myself knows what everyone's doing with their cheeses. But it will
Yeah,
be revealed on the finals day.
yeah.
Um, that's really interesting that you're taking inspiration from the competitors themselves.
And it's not just me. I know other cheese makers have done the same thing. I know Burt's Cheese did a Stilton with
Yeah.
vine leaves a few years ago, and they're now making their own cheese with vine leaves. I think Quicks have changed the aging of their cheese based on what Perry's done for a couple of years. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, really. It's great fun for the afternoon, the cheesemongers, cheesemakers, and actually anyone can do it. You don't have, I know the ladies who run Chiswick Cheese Market are doing some afternoon. I mean,
Hmm.
I feel sorry for them because I am going to beat them again, but um,
Well, there's a fighting words.
fighting talk, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
I know what they're doing, and I'm really excited to see how it comes out. So yeah, it's going to be good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that segues really nicely into my section, actually, of anyone can do affinage. Um, so I'll just bring the others in, if they want to add anything. Um, Also, for those who don't know me or know about me, I used to be a cheesemonger for a decade or so in London. Uh, Primarily, I worked at a place called Buchanan's Cheesemonger, where I was the cellar manager. For 6, 7 years, I was there. Um, and my job was to buy in the cheeses very young. We were lucky to have maturing rooms, different caves and different fridges and different temperature rooms and humidity rooms in the cellar underneath our shop. Uh, and so I had the joy of buying in these cheeses very, very young, and then aging them exactly how I see fit, and then selling them on. Goat's cheeses were definitely my favorite to do. Um, I think because they were so young and so fresh, the I can impart so much more of my own liking onto them in such a quick space of time. If I was to buy a cheddar in, for instance, I don't. It already comes into me like at 8, 9 months or whatever. I don't have that much input into what's going on with that. Whereas a goat's cheese, uh, a young fresh goat's cheese changes dramatically over the course of even like a week or a couple of days. So I love doing that. But then I left London last January and moved down to the southwest uh, and really missed cheese and having the playground of all these cheeses that I could play with and direct to exactly how I like it and be able to just eat those cheeses at will, as I'm sure you can appreciate, Roger. You seem to enjoy your cheese quite a bit. Yeah, I didn't quite have that luxury. Uh, and I realized that I could buy cheese online from the makers themselves or from good cheesemongers, or I could buy in a supermarket, but it wasn't quite like how I particularly like a cheese. Uh, and so I tend to do at home affinage
Yeah.
with some very, very basic, like I don't have any specialist equipment. I just have my domestic fridge and a little bit of knowledge. Um, so I thought it'd be interesting tonight just to show people at home how they might be able to do some affinage. Um, so in preparation for this, I went out 2 weeks ago and bought some fairly typical goat's cheese logs from the supermarket that should be widely available across the world, I think. Um, and did a couple of different things just to show people the results. So essentially, if you've only got a domestic fridge and you don't have your own cheese caves or cellars or anything, the things that you really want to control is the temperature, the humidity, and the airflow. Now, in the domestic fridge, you're probably not going to have that much control over all of those. So you want to create little mini environments in your fridge of which you might be able to control those things. So here's a good example of one of these goat's cheese logs. They might be very familiar to everyone. So I like my goat's cheese I like this particular log style to be quite hard and quite firm. As you said, Roger, with the crottin style, to age it for, well, this is only aged for a couple of weeks, not a couple of months, but I like them a bit more firm and fudgy in texture. Compared to this one, I don't know if you can see, same cheese, same batch, bought on the same day. I don't know if you can see much difference. This one is a lot more, and actually I'm in a very, very warm attic room right now, and this cheese has been sitting here for an hour and a half. But this one what I'm holding up now is a lot more smooth and fudgy, and this one here is way more squidgy. Can you see that? It's focusing on my face, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for reference, this is one that I bought today, same maker. You can see how sort of fresh and still sort of curd-like it is in the middle.
Yeah.
And so that's what it would have been when it first came to me, or when I first bought it, let's say. And you can see the size. Yeah.
Sorry, Matthew. And how are the flavors changing then as you've aged them?
Well, yeah. So, we'll come to that in a second.
Okay.
Hopefully you can see the size difference in the drier one to the not dry one, the squidgier one. I think there's quite a dramatic difference there. So essentially what I did to get this, my preferred style of flavor and texture, is, as Roger said, I unwrapped it, took it out of its wrapping. If you leave cheese in the fridge unwrapped, it's something that we advise against because it will dry out. And if you have a piece of cheddar or whatever, it will start cracking and not be that pleasant. But that was the intention with this cheese. So I unwrapped it. I kept it in a Tupperware, but with the lid loose on top, so air will still get into it. It wasn't completely sealed off. It wasn't sealed off at all, actually. The lid was just sort of askew on it. And then sort of turned it maybe 2 times a day, I think. Just constantly turn it for 2 weeks, make sure that like it wasn't sort of getting any condensation or moisture on any one side of it. And so all of that moisture that was in the cheese was sort of being drawn out. That's why it's shrunk like that. And that's why it's got such a nice, firm, fudgy texture. And then with this one, I did the complete opposite. I kept it in its wrapper. I wrapped it again, actually. In some, I just had greaseproof paper to hand. I put it in another Tupperware, completely sealed it, and put that Tupperware in the fridge door, where it's generally the warmest in the fridge. And it's sort of broken down the paste so much more than the other one, and it's become very, very, very gloopy. And so flavor-wise, I mean, the first one, the fresh one today, is still quite, you can see it's breaking apart. It's very, very crumbly. It still has that lemony freshness to it. Not overly goaty, as it were. Very, very fresh. The drier one, its flavor profile it's got a little bit of that lemony freshness, but it's very, very smooth, slightly sweet as well, actually. In fact, my wife is one of those goat's cheese haters, much to my annoyance. But she likes this middle one. She says it doesn't have any hint of that goatiness that she generally tends to dislike. It's a very, very smooth flavor, which is what I particularly like. Whereas the one that's been aged in, well, with no airflow in quite a warm condition, texturally, and it's got a lot more bounce to it. It's quite squidgy, and I suspect if I leave it out any longer, it's going to start running everywhere. But the flavor is so much more pronounced. Again, not necessarily overly goaty. It's just very, very. It's got like slightly nutty flavors that really, really poke through. Slightly more acidic as well, I think, actually, but not in a lemony sort of way. Essentially, it's stronger. They're obviously all the same cheese, but at very different ages, or rather different flavor profiles. So yeah, that's something that I tend to do. You do have to put a bit of time in, and you have to sort of look ahead a little bit. My advice would be to, if you can, to check the dates on any cheeses like that you buy in a supermarket. And you want a date that will be quite long. Anything that where the supermarket is selling in a couple of days or a week or so, you're not going to be able to affect it that much. But if it's in 6 weeks or so, you have quite a good idea that maybe the goat cheese is quite young and you may be able to steer it in a particular direction. Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful for anyone, but it's certainly helpful for me. I do it all the time. Not having the resources that I had. Again, it's not quite as good as having all 5 different rooms with different humidities and temperatures, but the idea is to create your own little micro environment in the fridge and do the best you can. And you can get quite decent results if you don't have access to a good cheesemonger, or you can't get it delivered online or whatever. It is something that I do quite a bit, but you have to think ahead. You have to sort of plan sort of 2-3 weeks ahead and know that you want your cheese in a particular way. But I tend to have my cheese on a rolling rotation.
You also have to get permission to do it in the fridge at home.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you live with someone, yeah, don't just be leaving naked goat cheeses out in the fridge. They won't be happy.
Thanks, Matthew. That was really interesting. Thank you. We've had a few questions come in. We've had a couple from Elliot that probably go to a few. So for Alan, your Delamere, how hard, Elliot is asking, how hard is your cheese compared with cheddar?
Softer in general. I suppose you could quite liken it to probably similar to probably a Cheshire or a Wensleydale.
So crumbly.
Yeah, it's a little bit more crumbly. It's somewhere between the two, I would say.
Great, thank you. One for Roger, I think. How does sheep yield compared to goat yield? You've you make a few sheep's milk cheeses, don't you?
So goat's milk's expensive, sheep's milk's even more expensive. So we would generally expect about 50% more cheese per litre with goat's milk than with sheep's milk than with goat's milk. But it's a very different process. So sheep's milk, because it's got such high fats and solids, sets really quickly. You need less rennet. There's lots of things that you learn the hard way of how to deal with sheep's milk if you're used to dealing with cows and goat's milk.
And would you say then that's probably why sheep's milk is harder to come by? You see less varieties and it's probably more expensive?
It's more expensive because milking goats is hard. Milking sheep is an absolute nightmare.
Why is that?
Because they don't stand still. Goats are very inquisitive. They'll come into a milking parlour quite happily and will quite happily be milked. Sheep are a little bit more awkward. In other countries, more like Spain, that it's dominated by sheep's milk. This country less so, but it's becoming a little bit more popular. But it's goat's milk is a small industry, sheep's milk is a tiny industry. And don't really have I don't think I've ever really seen. You sit on, certainly not in supermarkets, sort of liquid sheep's milk to drink. You can get frozen sheep's milk, but I think most people turn that into cheese or something else. So yeah, it's quite a small industry.
Thank you.
Also quite a challenge to maintain the milk throughout the year, of course.
Yeah.
There's a huge sort of, seasonality within that profile on sheep.
Of course.
Yeah, and we sort of get around that by a lot of the sheep's cheese we make is a hard sheep's cheese, so we'll keep it so we've got sort of supply all year round. But yeah, it's harder than dealing with goats, but I just love a challenge.
Of course. And maybe one for you, Gary. Can you make cheese from pygmy goats? Is it worth it?
I've never heard of anybody milking pygmy goats. I mean, they'd escape out of my parlour. So I suppose you could if you hand milked them, but I imagine you wouldn't get that much milk out of them. While I'm on, there was a question in the chat about larger industrial cheesemakers and smaller artisan cheesemakers.
Yes.
And I think there's room for both. I mean, there's lots of people that are really into their cheese that want to buy Rogers cheeses, and there's other people that just go to the supermarket and bung all their stuff in the trolley. So, a big percentage of the population just shop in the supermarket. So to meet that demand, we do have to have some fairly industrial processes. And also you've got the artisan ones. So I think there's not a competition. There's plenty of room for everybody. So we need a balance. That would be my view. And
I think you're actually right, Gary. I think, I don't see the likes of barbers and people like that as being industrial. They're factories, but they're doing exactly the same sort of thing I do, just on a larger scale, and that enables them to sell a product at a price more people can afford. And yeah, I agree. There's room enough for all of us, and we all need each other. Goats farming is a small industry. And I think it's really important that both sides of it, the processors and the manufacturers, sort of farmers, support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a question about your Rachel Reserva, Roger. Apologies if you answered it. I don't think you did. It is personally one of my favourite cheeses. But Hayley is asking, would you cook with it? Could you cook with it? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so I think Alan said earlier that it's hard to melt a goat's cheese like a cheddar. Our normal Rachel actually melts like a raclette, so that's really good. And I use Rachel Reserva. I'll grate it up and use it in a cheese sauce and things like that. So yeah, but I would warn you, if you're doing a cheese sauce, don't put much in there because it's quite a powerful cheese. I will always say, if you want a good tasting sauce, just use a small amount of a really good cheese, and you'll get a much better product. So yeah, Rachel Reserve if you've got any there, it's quite a strong pokey cheese. It's got a lovely rind on it. Now, if I'm making a sauce, I will grate that into the sauce as well. Or if you keep it, use it in soups to thicken them up. But also, if you've got a dog, it's a great way of paying the cheese tax.
That's probably leads on quite nicely. Question from Lorna to all, but maybe Matthew, are there any molds to be wary of on cheese? Obviously, the shilling we touched upon, those little grey blue patches, they're absolutely fine. But are there any that you would steer away from?
Me personally, well, so as Roger said, like on goat's cheeses, it's so common to get spots of molds, blue, blacks, yellow sometimes. Sometimes little pink molds as well. I guess we're all in quite a unique position.
I would say if you've got a purple mold, you've probably got some beetroot dripping on it. And red molds generally are a bad sort of mold on anything. So.
Yeah,
it's like if anything, it looks sort of slightly alarming, and a color that you're not quite expecting or not quite sure what it is, then I guess proceed with caution. It's quite hard to know how to answer that because I guess us in the industry sort of know what to expect and what not to expect, but you might not. Roger, would you have more of a way to discern for the
Yeah,
general
I mean,
public?
as I said, sort of red and purple, those sort of colours. I've only ever seen a red mold on a cheese once in France, and I cut it off and ate round it. It wasn't a problem. But those sort of things that red is the colour of danger for a reason. I would steer clear of those. Yeah,
I think
I'll eat anything.
if you see a little bit of the white bloomy rind coating the cut face of a brie or a camembert, that's absolutely fine. That's just the rind.
That's just more of the rind.
Developing.
It's stretching.
Katie in a class the other day, she was saying that pink awful stuff on a tub of Philadelphia, stay away from that. If you've let your Philadelphia go a little bit too long in the fridge and it gets that horrible pink color, would stay away from that, definitely.
Yeah, I think one of the differences is that will probably still be safe to eat, but will taste horrible. And I think that's a key thing. There's differences between what is safe and what is a sign that the cheese has spoilt and become inedible. So yeah.
And then I think probably the last question, because we're over time, but it's all been great. Last question to you, Roger, is where can you? This is from Lisa. Where can you get those T-shirts?
Well, come to Afternoon of the Year, and after Afternoon, if we've got any left, we'll put them on the website. But we had them at Melton Mowbray Cheese Festival last weekend. They sold really well. So yeah, we might print some more. Yeah, I love a bit of fun.
Well, your last year, your blue one was emblazoned all over social media afterwards.
Yeah. I'm not shy in coming forward.
You're not, are you, Roger? One last question from me, and it's just come in. Can you make molded cheeses in the same room as a fresh cheese?
I do every day.
There you go.
And I even make blue cheese in the same room that I make white molded brie style cheeses. Because when you're making the cheese, you haven't got mold spores. There's no blue mold spores. It's only once you start to age it, and we'll age it it's the aging where it becomes critical to keep it in a separate space.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for answering those questions. Matthew, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Come to Afternoon of the Year. If you're able to, everyone. It's on Tuesday, 16th of June. It's in Spitalfields Market, not in the market. It's just Spitalfields Christchurch. On Spitalfields, just opposite Liverpool Street Station. So very accessible for those in London and for those outside of London. Come along, everyone. Just come. Yeah. It's such a good day. It's really good value for money. It's like 1 till 7 is officially open to the public. So you've got plenty of time. You can have lunch and dinner there. There's drinks available as well, and there's an award ceremony. Yeah, it's such a really cool thing to do, and you get to see, as Roger said, like these base cheeses that have been aged and messed around with in all weird and wonderful ways, and you can, it's fascinating to compare what can be done with that same base cheese. Come, everyone.
Great, thank you. So thank you to everybody that came along this evening. We had Canada, we had 2 people from Virginia, Hong Kong, Chicago, York, Kilkenny, Somerset, Salisbury, so a real spread.
I just realised for the Kilkenny lady, look what I got hold of. This is what won the Supreme Champion at the Artisan Cheese Awards. It's not mine, but it's really nice.
Thanks, Roger. Great. Toby, anything you want to add?
Just to say thank you for everybody who took part, everybody who listened, because it's been a great opportunity to talk about how wonderful goat's cheese is.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming. I think we'll leave it there. Enjoy the rest of your cheeses if you've got any left, and if not, then you need to go and order some more. All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to end it now.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.